It all began with a box, old, worn by time, covered with a thin layer of dust. It was accidentally found in the attic of a house in Virginia Beach, the city where Edgar Cayce spent most of his life, and where, according to rumors, he left behind something greater than just prophecies. The box had no markings, no signature, but inside, a folder wrapped in cloth, and an envelope with the inscription, "To be opened only after 70 years. Someone opened it. Someone couldn't resist. And now this text circulates through the shadowy corners of the internet, gets deleted, restored, disappears again. Some claim they saw it only once. Others say it's a forgery. But those who know Cayce's voice, his manner, his strange calm even in the most troubling matters, insist this is an authentic interview. An interview that was never meant for the general public. The recording, allegedly made in 1944, just a few months before Cayce's death, is a transcript of a conversation between him and an unknown interlocutor. Not a journalist, not a scientist, someone who knew how to ask the right questions, and, apparently, was not afraid to hear the truth. The topic of the conversation was the 7 levels after death, stages through which, according to Cayce, every soul passes after leaving the physical world. But the strangest part is that he speaks about the future, our future, yours, mine. Everything you know about death is just a facade, an illusion. The real begins after, and no one is ready. That's how the transcript begins. Cayce describes the first level as transitional. Here the soul, according to him, is in a state of awakening. It's like a dream you're trying to escape from, but every movement is like wading through thick water. Souls at this level don't realize they're dead. They seek the light but see only reflections of their earthly fears. Some get stuck at this level for decades. The second level, reflection. Here each person relives their life again, but not from their own perspective, from the perspective of others. You feel the pain of those you hurt, the joy of those you helped. Cayce says this is the most painful and the most important stage. Here is born repentance, or final oblivion. The third level, awareness. The soul begins to understand the structure of being. Here it meets guides, whom Cayce called beings of light. They don't speak in words. They transmit knowledge through images, memories, energy. Many return from this level back, like dreamers, like Cayce himself. They become mediums, seers, prophets. But beyond this, it's not for everyone, he said. From this point begins the forbidden, levels that very few ever reach. Why? Cayce remains silent, or perhaps he simply knows that words are powerless here. But it is precisely at the 4th level that the most terrifying part begins, not because there is hell, but because there is truth, a terrifying truth about ourselves, and what he goes on to describe changes not only our perception of death, but of life itself. Cayce called the 4th level the mirror corridor. Here, he said, the soul doesn't just see its life, it sees who it could have been. This is not a metaphor, it is a direct experience of all the alternative paths that were available in earthly life, but, for one reason or another, were not chosen. And each of them is like a separate reality. In one you forgive, in another you seek revenge, in a third you enter a monastery, in a fourth you commit a crime you never committed in life but came close to. And the most terrifying thing is the realization that all these selves are alive. They are real at the level of spirit, and every choice we make branches out not into a hypothesis, but into an energy structure that exists in the shared field. In this corridor, said Cayce, the soul feels for the first time that God is not a judge but a witness, and you are the only one who judges yourself. He says that many at this level give up, ask to return, cannot bear the weight of consciousness, and some push forward, The fifth level. He called it the infinite time. Here, linearity disappears. The soul begins to perceive everything, past, future, and present, as a single layer. It was here that Cayce received his prophecies. He said he saw the future not as a film, but as an ocean of probabilities. And in that ocean were especially clear, dense knots, events that are nearly inevitable. One such knot, a great rupture in the middle of the 21st century. Cayce did not specify exactly what would happen, but the images he described were disturbingly specific. Cities without light, people in white masks, children born with the memory of previous lives, countries disappearing from the map, not through war, but through the thinning of meaning. And all of this, he said, is connected to how humanity will pass the collective third level, awareness. Because, he said, the entire world is also a soul, a global one, and it, like every individual, passes through its own levels after death. And if humanity is now at the third, then ahead lies either enlightenment or the denial of the self. At the sixth level begins what he calls the separation of the shadow. The soul lets go of everything that is not its essence. Pain, fear, pride, envy. It doesn't destroy them. It releases them. According to Cayce, it is like stripping down to the bone, to light. And it is here that the soul is first able to come into contact with what we call the Creator, or something higher, or even itself, but from the future. And the seventh level. Here Cayce fell silent. The transcript breaks off mid-sentence. A pause, long, and then just one sentence 2 pages later. I cannot speak about it. I am not allowed. Who didn't allow him? Why? Why is it that this level specifically cannot be spoken of? Some researchers believe that the seventh level is the end of the cycle, an exit, a transition to another turn of existence beyond our understanding. Others believe that Cayce saw something that could drive anyone unprepared to madness, and it is here that the most interesting part begins. Because from this moment on in the interview, Cayce turns to what he himself calls the potential traps of the future. The traps of the future, says Cayce, are not in technology, not in catastrophes. The trap is in the forgetting of the spirit. He claims that humanity stands before a trial that repeats every few thousand years, and each time civilization either awakens or falls into oblivion. He mentions Atlantis, the Sumerians, Egypt before the dynasties, and he says that all of them knew about the 7 levels, but at some point they chose to forget, not accidentally but deliberately, because the truth was too heavy, because if a person knows they are immortal, they either become light or madness. The future is not programmed, Cayce repeats, it is constructed in every moment, and we as humanity are now choosing to go into a soulless technocracy or return to the source. He predicts that by the middle of the 21st century, a new type of human will emerge. They will not be biologically different, but their perception of time, energy, life, and death will change radically. These people will have a direct connection to the level of awareness, as Cayce himself did. They will remember their past incarnations, feel the pain of others as their own, and see events before they happen, and because of this, he says, there will be a global attempt to suppress this wave. Knowledge will make people dangerous, he says, not to the world, to the system. He speaks of 3 phases of resistance that this generation will face. The first, ridicule. People with new consciousness will be called crazy, fanatics, charlatans. The second, isolation. Structures will be created to identify and treat such people under the guise of care, under the guise of science. The third, temptation. They will be offered power, money, recognition. But the price? is the rejection of spirit. Cayce says that only those who have realized that they are not a body, not a name, not a profession, but a flow, a light, a mind beyond time, will be able to pass through these phases. And here he returns to the seventh level, but not directly, indirectly, through an image. He speaks of a door that cannot be opened from the outside. It can only be passed through when the soul stops wanting to enter it, because the very desire is still fear. And beyond this door is that which has no form, no word, no meaning, only silence. And in that silence, everything. The interlocutor asks, "Have you been there?" No answer, only a pause. And then, "I almost didn't come back." Some believe that it was after this session that Cayce's health sharply deteriorated, that he lost part of himself trying to express what cannot be expressed. It was then that he began writing his final prophecies, the ones that were never published, the ones that they say were in that very box. The final pages, yellowed, with ink blurred by time. Some claim they were not written by Cayce's hand, but dictated by him, in trance, in an altered state. And supposedly he himself did not remember afterward what he had said. It all begins with a single phrase. When you hear the voice from within, do not argue. It is older than you. Then come fragments, full of symbols, images, almost poetic lines. Some researchers call it nonsense, but those who have delved into practices of consciousness, into transcendental states, insist, encoded here, is a truth that cannot be conveyed by logic. One excerpt reads, "In the year when water touches the sky and the earth begins to sing, a crack will open between worlds. Through it will come not the dead, but the forgotten. They are not evil, but they are hungry, not for flesh, for knowledge." What does water touches the sky mean? Who are the forgotten? Some interpret this as a prophecy of climate catastrophes, others as a metaphor for information oversaturation, when the soul drowns in data, losing itself. But the most frightening part is the idea of the crack, the interworld, a space where the boundary between the living and those stuck on the fourth or fifth level, unable to find a way out, begins to dissolve. And Cayce wrote that in these places, stuck souls are not looking for bodies, but for consciousness through which they can speak, act, influence. He predicted that in the 21st century there would be a sharp rise in the number of people claiming to hear voices, see dreams that later come true, feel what should be impossible. They will be diagnosed, given pills, isolated, but not because they are sick, because they are the threshold between worlds. Then another sharp turn, and a prophecy that almost no one talks about. It was crossed out from most published texts. When the third continent disappears, the beginning of a phrase. But what continent? Possibilities. Australia, Greenland, or something less literal. Perhaps the space of the spirit. Some believe it refers to the European soul, the gradual disappearance of meaning, faith, the connection to the origin. Cayce links this to the silence of the churches and the helplessness of science. He writes, "When scientists begin to speak like priests, and priests, like bureaucrats, listen only to the children, they still remember." And then it becomes clear, this is about a kind of return, a remembrance of what was known before birth. Cayce claims that every child under 5 years old still remembers their path between the levels. But then memory is erased by school, fears, rules, and if in the future a generation appears that retains this memory, the world will change in a single generation. The final page. It was placed separately, thick paper, almost like parchment. The handwriting was trembling, but clear. The signature, EC, and just a few sentences. If you are reading this, it means you have already heard the call, and now you have a choice. But remember, knowledge changes you forever. It wasn't just a note, it was a warning. It was right after these words, according to legend, that the person who found the box disappeared forever. Some say he went to Tibet, others that he was found dead and his body was strangely distorted. But most researchers simply stay silent. They say they cannot comment or don't want to. So what was all of this? The 7 levels are not an allegory, not a religious system. They are a map, a navigation through the afterlife experience that in truth is happening right now. Cayce claimed that after death you don't go to a new place, you simply reveal what is already within. And each level exists in life as well. You can get stuck on the first level, living life like a dream, not noticing yourself. You can pass through the second and feel another's pain as your own. You can enter the third and begin to see the connections between everything. But beyond that, only if you are ready. And this is exactly what the final prophecy was about a time when the gates would open from within, not for the masses, not for everyone, but for those who remember, not believe, but remember. They will be ordinary people, without mantras, without religions, without organizations. One, a bus driver, another, a cashier, a third, a single mother. But they will begin to hear each other, without words, through dreams, through strange coincidences, through sensations that cannot be explained, and they will know death is not the end, it is the beginning. The future is not a line, it is a mirror. The truth is not outside of us, it is us, without fear. And most importantly, they will realize that we are not alone, never were. The souls of those who have passed through all the levels remain nearby, not as shadows, but as light, clues, warmth, conscience. And when a person in silence suddenly feels that they are not alone, it is not an illusion, it is a sign. Those who have studied these materials are convinced. Cayce left a key, a map, and a warning, but not for everyone, only for those who are ready to let go of the familiar world in order to remember the real one. This kind of text won't be shown on television. It's removed from YouTube. It's not cited by academics, but it lives, in copies, in memory, in you. And now that you know this, you are no longer the person you were before reading it. And there is only one question left. Will you return to the old dream? Or will you go further? If you felt that this material touched something deeper within you, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a like, not for the algorithms, but as a sign, I have awakened. Subscribe if you're ready to go further, because there is more to come. The kind of things that are never spoken aloud. And share this video with those who are ready to hear it, because the time has come, and those who see must find each other, here, now, together.